Hey, y'all, and welcome. I'm Gigi, a retired social scientist and biologist who loves hiking and travel. And today I get the chance to know Farid a little bit better. Welcome, Farid.
Hi everyone.
So let's just jump right into it. What are we drinking? So I have sparkly water.
Right. I so it's a little bit early in the day for beer or wine here, and it's a little bit late for caffeine. So what I have is like a caffeine-free lemon ginger tea here with me,
Good choice.
and on a Mesa Verde National Park cup, which is like my favorite coffee cup.
Very nice. So, Farid, where are you from?
I am originally from India, though I spent most of my childhood in Bahrain. And now I am living in Seattle, Washington for the last 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are your social media handles and any URLs for blogs that you might write?
Sure. So my social media handle, my Instagram handle is at Farid is hiking somewhere. And I do have a website, a blog, right? A URL, which is the condescendinghiker.com. Right. It's actually very recently launched, but yeah, we can get into the details of what that is a little bit later, but that's what it is for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about the inspiration behind your Instagram account and your blog.
The Instagram account is simply just a way to sort of showcase my travels, my love for hiking. I think that's really it. So I avoid mostly posting anything else apart from like it's a travel diary in general, right? And as for the blog itself, well, it's called the Condescending Hiker. Right. So it's about a hiker who can be condescending. It's sort of an avenue to sort of let out my creative side. We all have these instances when we're out hiking, right? When there are hundreds of people on the trail and you run into people who can be slightly annoying, who may be playing loud music on the Bluetooth speakers, not respecting the privacy or the wishes of other people, who may leave litter behind, who may feed the wildlife, leave their dogs unleashed, right? Things where they don't follow the principles or the etiquettes of hiking. And sometimes it gets very annoying. Sometimes we wish we could confront them, but mostly we don't because we are polite creatures who don't want to get into those kind of situations, right? So I created this character called the condescending hiker who does those things, who actually, when he finds something that somebody is not following, he confronts them about it. He sort of sometimes has these confrontations, tries to advise them, and sometimes, more often than not, takes it a bit too far. That's the inspiration behind the condescending hiker.
I think that's really cool. Sometimes you need humor to bring levity to a situation that is annoying,
Yes.
So I look forward to reading this. What are your labels and how did you acquire them?
Um, Labels. So think of, I'm a hiker, I'm a backpacker, I'm a traveler. You can add solo to each of those adjectives out there, right? And as far as acquiring them, I think it's just I love each of these things, right? And the reason why I want to do them alone is, well, partially because I'm an introvert, so I'm always looking to do things alone, right? But also because I don't want to wait around for people to join me. It's great if friends do join me, but one of the things that I always say is that hiking is mandatory, company is optional, right? So I'm going out there irrespective of whether people are coming with me or not. If they do, great. If they don't, my love for hiking precedes all of that, and so I'm still going out there and doing that thing, which is my life in a way.
I can relate to that. I am also an introvert and I don't mind company when I'm hiking,
Right.
but like you said, it's not mandatory.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can relate to it that even if you are hiking with people, if I have had like 2 or 3 continuous hikes with people, I will look for a hike to go solo on. I need that at least once in a while to just sort of connect with nature on my own without having any other distraction. And people can be a bit distracting at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long have you been into hiking?
Well, I've been hiking for about 5 to 6 years now. And I was a fairly late entrant into the world of hiking. As I said, I grew up in Bahrain. There's no hiking there. There's not even like a hiking store that sells hiking equipment there, right? So I had no clue about the world of hiking for a very long time. It wasn't until I got to the US, got to Seattle, got to Arizona actually, and in the summer of 2015, a few friends and I took a trip to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. And that was the first national park that I had ever visited in my life. Um, and that's where I first got into hiking. That's where I did my first hike there. And I remember like we were all dressed in like cotton t-shirts and cotton shorts with sneakers, absolutely not prepared. We had like two protein bars. We had like 1 liter of water for a 15-mile hike. So we had absolutely no clue what we were doing. Uh, but even then, but the one thing that I remember is that I connected with that activity and I connected with nature so much in that very instant that I sort of knew that that this was going to be it, right? You sort of have that one moment where you find something that you have been looking for. Hiking was it, right? At that point, like I knew then itself that this is something that I'm going to pursue no matter what. And fate. I'm a big believer in fate, right? And so it so happened that in the summer of 2017, uh, when I was looking for a job after graduating, after finishing grad school, I ended up getting a job offer from Seattle, the capital of hiking in this country, right? So I think like it was sort of a universe calling out kind of thing, if you want to say, right? It was just, hey, I love hiking so much, and this universe just sort of transferred me to the place where I could do it every single weekend and where I could explore nature however I wanted. So yeah, that's how I got started.
That's awesome. The Pacific Northwest is just an amazing place to hike. You have so many options, different terrain, different difficulty level, like
Yeah, and I absolutely love it. And now that you think about it, like I hadn't been to the mountains for the first 25 years of my life. Now I can't imagine living in a city where there isn't one. I'm just like, no. Like if you ask me to relocate to Phoenix today, I'll be like, yep, not doing that. Like, no, there has to be mountains, otherwise it's a no from me.
I live part of the year in the Pacific Northwest in an air
Right.
stream and part of the year in New Orleans. And I can also relate to that because when I'm here in New Orleans, flat land,
Mm.
it's, I love the green, I love the culture here. There's so many perks, but being outdoors is not necessarily one of them. So I do miss the mountains when I am not in them dearly.
So do you spend like the winter in New Orleans? Is that uh
If you
well
can call this winter, it's 70 degrees today.
I know. No, I grew up in Bahrain, so I completely understand, the lack of winters that the South has. But no, that's actually great, isn't it? Because, I have a friend who used to say that his dream is to find a job that would allow him to stay 6 months in Seattle and 6 months in Phoenix, right? Because let's face it, from October onwards till like about March, April, the Pacific Northwest doesn't exactly have the greatest weather, and the access to outdoors is fairly difficult as well, right? So New Orleans, right, with its 70-degree mild, pleasant winters and its great jazz scene, right? I don't think that's a bad trade in at all, right? I would love that as well. But yeah, I think what I would prefer is like spending 6 months in Seattle and then I go spend the remaining 6 months in New Zealand, right? Because it's still summer
Yes,
there. Right? That would be my perfect scenario.
half and half. Snowbirding, yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes. What are your most like epic hikes? What are your favorite hikes?
So many, right? It's so hard to come up with a list. But I think that at the top of my head, it has to be the W trek I did in Patagonia in Chile this February, right? I backpacked for 5 days alone through the W trek, right? The W circuit, and it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. That land is carved from a dream, honestly. I still remember, the last morning there. I woke up at like 2 a.m. To do a sunrise hike up at the what they call the towers, the Mirador Torres, right? So that we could capture the sunrise there. And so yeah, I hiked for like two hours in the dark. Reached there, it was below freezing. It was in February, right? So it was below freezing, and my hands are shaking in the cold, But the moment that sun starts to come out, and I got really lucky because the weather in the mountains is always tricky, right? So very often those towers would be hidden in the clouds. Fortunately for me, even though it started raining in the night, by the time we got to the towers, it was clear. It was crystal clear, and then the sun came up, and it reflected on the towers. The towers were just red and pink and yellow hues, and it's one of the most gorgeous sceneries of my life. So that is right up there. Apart from that, I think there is a hike in British Columbia called Panorama Ridge. It's in the Garibaldi Lake Provincial Park, which was another backpacking trip I did solo for my 31st birthday. And that was an incredible experience. And Seattle, I have to mention a Seattle one, right? Because I live here. So I think the one I remember is Cascade Pass and Sahale Arm in the North Cascades. Um, yeah, so those would be my top three, but spoiled for choice, really.
Those are three great choices. I just being new to backpacking, having day hiked many times, but getting into backpacking, it's occurring to me that there is a whole world of backpacking, like not just in the Pacific Northwest or the US,
Oh,
but I travel for other reasons. I go to Europe usually once a year.
right.
Now, like you said, I could go to Chile, I could go to the Andes, I could go anywhere to backpack.
Yeah,
It,
you
it's
know.
an exciting prospect. All the doors that are opening now that I'm getting into backpacking.
No, exactly, and you should. I would, I mean, it's always a little more difficult to backpack internationally just because of the logistics involved, right? But if you can, absolutely do it. It will change your life. Apart from, when I was in Chile, instead of hello, you say hola, right? But apart from those differences, it's just um, the cultural interaction is so great, right? Because there were people from Germany, there were people from Australia, there were people from all over South America there who were hiking with you, right? I remember there was this. I met this Brazilian helicopter pilot who works in the Air Force, right? And we did a couple of hikes in Chile together, right? So you have those interaction, you have that exposure, and the great thing is I still keep in touch with him, even though he's in Brazil and I'm in the United States, right? So absolutely do it. I would absolutely recommend backpacking internationally at every opportunity.
Will do, and I'll keep you apprised on where I go first whenever
Please do.
the whenever pandemic times are over and you can travel safely.
Yes, you do remember that though. Yes, that's true.
Are there any groups or organizations that you want to give a shout out to?
Um, I think that there's so many, right? But I would say, anything to do with, the BIPOC population. There's a group on Facebook called uh, Hikers of Color, right? So that's definitely one that sort of encourages people of color to go out there. I think there's an Instagram handle called Unlikely Hikers. I think that's a great one because not only do they post about hikers that you may not see on your Instagram feed as regularly, they also tell the stories of them, right? Hikers from indigenous communities, hikers from all over the globe, right? So yeah, I think those two especially I would recommend.
Okay, I do. I haven't tried to join the Hikers of Color Facebook group, but I will do
Mm.
that now that you've recommended them. And Unlikely Hikers, I think that was the first like account that I saw where hikers looked like me. They weren't
Yes,
all. They weren't like Nordic, Scandinavian,
yes,
all
yes,
willowy women in
yeah,
Patagonia jackets, and they looked like
yeah,
real people. And I saw people who looked like me, and it made me think, okay, I'm not the only one like me doing this, because on the trail I don't really see other people like me very often. But I
yeah.
assume that if I'm doing it, other people like me are doing it. I just don't know where they are. So
And yeah, and it makes so much of a difference. Just seeing them, right? Even if it's on Instagram, right? Just seeing that there are others who look like us or who look like you out there. It's not an easy journey, right? It is such, to say that hiking is the outdoors are for everyone, but that's not really the case. Most of the people outdoors just happen to be, uh, white people, right? And that's just that's just the way the outdoors industry has been created, and there are a lot of factors behind it. We could have a whole discussion about why that is, why so. But let's just say it's not. It can be discouraging if every person that you see outdoors is doesn't even remotely look like you, right? And especially when I'm backpacking, right? I never see anybody else from the color community except myself, and that's something that I really hope changes, right? So accounts like that, unlikely hikers, is definitely like it's just sort of out there. It's just sort of encouraging people to go out there and uh, say that, hey, you don't have to be a certain race or color or gender to be a hiker
Or
or to
size,
enjoy the outdoors, or yeah, or sex, right?
or
So
size. So, um, yeah, I will make sure Facebook group Hikers of Color. I'll join.
yes, absolutely.
So, what is something that we wouldn't guess about you?
There are lots of things that might feel like Koda, but I think what I can say is that I actually don't know how to swim. Uh,
Okay.
right? Yeah. So I go to all these beautiful alpine lakes and I hike there, right? And I can wade, I can sort of float, sort of, but I'm not really a good swimmer. That's something that's on my agenda that I should improve, because
Yeah.
yeah, because if you're going to these beautiful alpine lakes, you should be able to enjoy, the refreshing, icy cool waters. And I only sort of manage to dip my feet in them every time, because I'm like, I might just sink and drown.
Did
So,
you just say refreshing and icy cold in the same sentence? How can they be?
well, there are so many people who will tell you that they are refreshing. They are refreshing and icy cold,
I've
right?
yeah, I've heard this propaganda. I have yet to test it and see if it's true, but I can swim well enough. I didn't grow up swimming a lot. I took
Mm,
lessons as a kid, so I know how. But as far as like practice, I don't swim regularly. So I get tired really fast because you're moving a lot of like
yeah.
using all kinds of muscles, and if you're not using those regularly, your body's like, "What are you doing?" But I think if I'm with someone else, I would probably jump in just once
Oh
to see if it is actually refreshing or if it's just like
no, it's
icy,
just
like ice
it's
pick.
just icy cold.
Oh,
It's usually just icy cold. I think anything above 5,000 feet, right?
yeah.
It takes some form of courage to jump in. So I would usually just like sort of sink my weight, like just wade my way through, and like the moment it gets too cold, I'll hop out. But I've tried staying in, because I do see people jumping in. I meet people who would like jump into an alpine lake in the middle of April on like a cloudy day in Seattle when it's like 50 outside, or 55 outside, and they'll still jump into the lake. And I go like, how are you even like, how are you surviving it?
They would have to jump in because you couldn't force your body to wade in at that temperature.
Yeah.
Your body would say no, we're not going any further. So jumping in forces you under, right?
Yeah, and I remember, so last spring, I started hiking around March, right? So last spring, I went to this hike called Serene Lake in Seattle, nearby Seattle, and and at that time the lake is still frozen. It's like 80% frozen, right? And I was just sitting. There's a rock there by the lake, and I was just sitting there enjoying my snacks, and I saw someone just come in and jump. And I was into like, this is March and the lake is frozen, right? So I heard an avalanche like a few feet away, and I'm going like, how is this person able to do this? I wish I had the courage, but it's probably
I don't
not.
know if, yeah, we'll see. I'm going to do it once. I don't know how cold it's going to be when I do. I might choose like a more mild situation. But I would get into a hot springs for sure. And
Oh,
like, yeah, that would be lovely. Hiking to a
oh,
hot springs.
then you should definitely check out Idaho. Oh man, Idaho, Oregon, such beautiful hot springs. Yeah, those states. Yeah, absolutely. No.
What advice would you have for someone who loves the outdoors and wants to get into the hiking community?
Um, just gets into the hiking community. Um, just reach out and reach out. I think one of the biggest deterrents can be that you don't know someone who actually is interested in this, right? That was a deterrent. That was the biggest deterrent I felt, and I still do. I don't have a lot of friends who hike, right? So yeah, so I always, I'm always like, I always encourage people to just reach out to anybody on Instagram or on meetup groups or on Facebook groups, right? Reach out, ask your questions, right? Do a little bit of research, and even just join, on a group hike. There are meetups, or there are a lot of meetup groups that organize group hikes, right? Yeah, I have organized a couple actually myself. All right, so I'm always happy to talk and to arrange group hikes if necessary. So yeah, just look at these meetup groups, look at these Facebook groups, look at even on Instagram, right? But more important than anything, just sort of ask the questions, right? I feel like a lot of people are scared because they think, oh, I don't know if I can actually climb 2,000 feet in like X number of miles, right? And you find out that hiking is just putting your 1 feet in front of the other, right? As long as you're equipped and you're prepared, right? Like don't wear sneakers like I did on my first hike, right? Don't hike in sneakers, things like that, right? And the only way you can do that is by asking questions and by doing your own research.
And there are a lot of YouTube videos now that
Yeah,
have people reviewing gear or talking about being a beginner. And that is one place that I feel really safe going, YouTube, because there's no like interaction there. I can just watch and absorb whatever, absorb what I want and leave the rest. So, besides the Facebook groups, YouTube has been a really big help for me, especially listening to other women, other
yeah.
older women who are hiking, just to talk about the gear they're using and the way they go about, making sure they're safe on the trail, that kind of thing. It's been really helpful.
that that's important. And yes, I agree, YouTube is a very resourceful tool as well if you want to use it for that purpose. Absolutely.
Who inspires you?
So I don't get inspired by any specific people ever. All right, I'm just generally I'm not into celebrity worshiping. All right. So what I get inspired by is just observing anybody on the trail, who's on the trail, and if they're alone, especially, and if they happen to be a person of color, or if they happen to be a woman who's like backpacking alone, backpacking solo, or even hiking solo. I think that encourages me to know that I can also sort of conquer that fear or that world, because I have been through that journey myself, where I loved something but I didn't know how to start, right? And so when I see people overcoming that fear and sort of really indulging themselves, because starting anything on your own or doing anything on your own is not easy, right? It's definitely not easy. Hiking, especially if you're entering the world of backpacking, to understand what gear to use, how to carry it, how much water do you need, how many change of clothes do you require, right? Do you need a bear spray or a bear bell, right? All those things. Like if I see someone on their own doing it, it just gives me the courage to just follow that path, continue following that path, and keep learning. So yeah, any person of color hiking, any woman hiking, and hiking solo, that's my inspiration.
Do you have a favorite inspirational quote? And if so, what is it and by who?
So I do, but I do want to say that I am usually not a big fan of inspirational quotes or travel quotes. I actually have a personal grain to grind against these quotes, right? Um, Mostly because, okay, I'll give you a quote. Before I give a quote that I actually like, I'm going to give you a quote that I actually absolutely despise,
Okay.
right? That quote is, life is either a daring adventure or nothing. And I hate that quote from the bottom of my heart, right? Because it doesn't give the context that, there's a whole lot happening between a daring adventure and a nothing, right?
True.
Uh, Adventure quotes, travel quotes are meant to inspire you, but they often sound like they don't realize, or that traveling and adventuring and hiking and all these things are a privilege. And there are people who simply cannot afford to do that, whether it be the lack of resources, lack of time, right? Most people in the world cannot afford to travel or hike, right? And I feel like quotes like this, life is either daring adventure or nothing, sort of make you feel that, hey, if you are not living this privileged life, then your life means nothing. And that's not true.
It's
And I
not.
don't and I don't want people to take that away as some sort of lesson, right? So that's why I usually not a big fan of quotes, especially these inspiring ones. But there's one quote that I do like, and that's that I find inspiring, and that's "Be fearless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire."
I love
Uh, yes, so that one is something that I do use, and I try to, you know, implement it in my life. Not always, I don't succeed always, but I find it very inspiring. That quote, yes.
Who is it by?
I believe it's from the director of Frozen and Frozen 2. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So imagine that quote came from someone who basically, works for Walt Disney, right? But I love Frozen. I think it has a great message, right? Yeah, right. I love Elsa. I'm a Disney child. I love anything Disney usually, right? Especially Pixar. Uh, but yeah, this quote, when I read it, I was like, yeah, that is something I can take and something away from, and it doesn't bracket things into like one particular box.
No, because that pursuit could be anything, as
Yes.
long as it's something that sets your soul on fire. That's meant for you.
Yes.
So yeah, I like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you could give a new hiker one piece of advice, what would it be?
Um, don't let the lack of other people around you who may not be interested in hiking, or lack of interested people around you, be a deterrent. I feel like this especially happens in the color community because we don't have uh, hiking is such a cultural thing at times, right? You grow up with it, right? You see people who are backpacking or who are even camping. They take camping trips every weekend, so it's sort of like inculcated in them from a very early age, and that doesn't really happen in the color community, right? And over that, even if you do like hiking, often you find that people around you don't are not or is not interested, right? And that can discourage you, and sometimes it just stops you, and you just go like, well, I guess this is not an activity that I should be pursuing, right? And you go back to, I don't know, to watching Netflix or playing pool or bowling, right? Whatever it is that everyone else does. So I would say that don't let that be a deterrent, right? If you can reach out to others, you will find that there are people like you and me. There are people like us out there who, and we want to help people of color get out, right? We want to make the outdoors for everyone. It is currently not, right? But if you are a person of color and you want to hike, there are resources available, there are people available, and we are more than happy to help you get out there and to answer any questions you may have. And if you're in the Seattle area, you know, just reach out to me and I will take you on a hike. I have done that, right, for people. So I would absolutely, if someone reaches out to me and says, hey, can we go on a hike sometime? I'm more than happy to introduce you to this world because, I find so much meaning from it.
That's awesome. And that is a big barrier is not having someone to ask and or being afraid that if you ask someone, they'll say no and you'll be rejected. Um,
Yes.
so just offering that information freely, I think, is a huge, huge compassionate and kind thing to do. And also it helps to counter the the fear of doing something different. Because when your friends and family hear that you want to go hiking and they don't do it, they may discourage you on purpose
Yes.
just because of safety reasons. Honestly, historically, it has not been safe to go off and do things like this by yourself. And
Yes.
your friends and family love you. They want you to remain alive and happy in this world. So when they say, you're going to go where? Into the woods?
Yeah.
With,
Yeah.
are there any other Black people? Are there any other,
Yeah.
no, there's only white
Yeah.
people. Why are you going? And so that type of interaction with your friends and family
Yeah.
may stop you because you will accept the idea that this is not safe, that is not a good idea. Um, there are ways to do it safely. I will say that.
Yes, and you can never be 100% safe.
No,
But that can happen with anything, right? When you're driving a car, you're not 100% safe either. And to add to that point, again, nobody in my family hikes. My mother, when I told her that, hey, I'm going out to the mountains, she actively discourages me every single time. She has asked me sometimes to promise her that I won't go hiking because she's like, because she's so worried, because she's never been on a trail before, so she doesn't know that, hey, most of these trails are very well guided, right? And yeah, if I'm going alone, I will try to go on well guided trails. I will try not doing a lot of off trailing, not doing a lot of hikes where off trailing is required. But my mom doesn't know that, so she will tell me, hey, Farid, you need to stop hiking, like. And then she'll send me links sometimes of like of incidents that have happened, right? Like I remember a couple of years ago, a couple fell off from Taft Point in Yosemite, right? Which was so tragic. uh, but she obviously found that link somewhere and she sent it to me saying, hey, like, look at this, like, this is what happens when you go hiking. I'm like, yeah, it can happen while hiking. It's really, really tragic that it happened, but there are ways to be safe, right? And as long as you follow that, chances are that you will come back home safely. Though, yes, you have to take your precautions. Please be safe. Please, if you're going into, like, for instance, if you're going to grizzly territory, please take a bear spray with you, right? If I'm going solo hiking on in grizzly territory, more often than not, if I see or hear something that scares me or that alarms me that this I might be running into grizzly, if the trail is not crowded or if the trail doesn't have a lot of people, then I might just turn around and go back because,
Exactly.
yeah, better safe than sorry, right? So yeah, don't be prepared, right? And if you still run into some form of danger or you think you're in danger, turn around.
Just like if you were walking down a dark street at night and there was some strange noises, you would try to turn around and go back to where the street lights were. So
Yeah.
if you have questions about that, like Farid said, please reach out to us. I'd be happy to talk with you about the things that I do to make myself as safe as I can, and still enjoy hiking. And I'm sure he would too. So you do have a blog, right? And
Mhm.
you have your IG account, but are there other blogs or other Instagram accounts that you would recommend?
Um, so again, honestly, I like so unlikely hikers is something that I've already mentioned. That's a great Instagram account. I also like following smaller accounts, right? That may not necessarily be, influencers, right? So I can tell you a couple of accounts. There's an account that I really appreciate is Me in the Mountains. Yeah, it's just, I think she's also a PNW adventurer, right? And someone who loves hiking and adventuring. And so I love following those small little accounts that have their own travel stories, right? Instead of it catering to a huge audience segment just because they have like 4 million followers and whatnot. So like, for instance, yeah, so Me in the Mountains, it feels a lot more authentic to me, right? Following these accounts than it does on following large IG accounts. So yeah, Me in the Mountains. I think there's another one, Malika Trips, I want to say. I'm not 100% certain on that, but yeah, that's another Instagram handle that I like following. And I actually have conversations with them from time to time about, hey, like, I'll see something that I'll see where they are, and I'm like, hey, I actually want to go here, right? So now that becomes a conversation where I can reach out to them and ask them questions about how to plan for this trip, right? So which you cannot do with most IG accounts which has like 300,000 followers, because let's face it, they don't have the time, right? I'm sure they get thousands of messages, right? So yeah, so I like these small Insta accounts for that reason as well.
Okay, so I'll make sure to put those links below so other people can find these accounts as well. And so this part is completely optional, but if you have a message on positivity or inclusion or sustainability and you'd like to share that, I'd be happy to make space for it now.
I think about we have already covered quite a bit, right, in terms of inclusivity and what I would say is that um, hiking's changed my life, right? And I mention that every single person, and if you know me, you know that already. It's given my life a positive direction, right? So I want to see, or I want to help other people see that side of nature, right? I want to show this world to others, to share this world with others in a responsible way, right? And I want to see more people like me on the trail. I would absolutely love to see more people of color, more people with different backgrounds, right, with different nationalities, from different cultures, just be out there and enjoy nature as much as I do. So if that's something that I can help with, or if there are avenues to do that, please reach out to me, and I would do everything possible to make sure that you're out on the trail, as long as you promise to recreate responsibly and follow the leave no trace principles. That's very important.
Yeah, leave no trace is super important. I'll also provide a link below. So if you haven't heard that term before, you can read about it and understand what it means. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today, Farid.
Yeah.
It was lovely to get to know you a little bit better. And I will take you up on that offer of offering advice, because I have some questions about hikes that I want to
Oh,
do
yeah.
this summer. So yeah,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Please reach out. I'm more than happy to share my experiences.
awesome. And thank you guys for tuning in. I will leave a list of Farid's information below so that you can go and follow him on his social media accounts and read his blog. Stay safe out there and be excellent to each other. Bye.
Bye.